Did you know that across this nation, 1 out of 3 college students faces food insecurity? Welcome to the Convocations program at Carleton College. I'm your host, Carrie Rott, Director of Events. Now we'll be together for 1 hour and we'll include time for questions. You may click on that Q&A tab on your screen to submit your questions at any time, and I'll pose those to our guest speaker at the conclusion of her presentation. Rachel Sumekh is the founder and CEO of Swipe Out Hunger, a national nonprofit committed to ending college student hunger. Nationally, 1 in 3 college students faces food insecurity, threatening a student's ability to focus in class, stay in school, and feel part of the campus community. Swipe Out Hunger advises colleges and universities on the design of common sense and innovative anti-hunger programs. Its most commonly adopted model is the organization's flagship program, the Swipe Drive, which allows students to donate their extra meal plan swipes to their peers who face food insecurity on campus. From its beginnings as a grassroots movement at UCLA in 2010, Swipe Out Hunger has since served 1.8 million nourishing meals across 38 states and more than 110 campuses. Sumekh's work was recognized by President Obama, featured in the New York Times, and landed her on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. The title of her presentation today is The Power of Student Advocacy: How Students Are Ending Hunger. Welcome to Carleton College, Rachel Sumekh.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. As mentioned, my name is Rachel Sumekh, and I'm so excited to be kicking off Carleton's Convocation events with you all with this talk today. Over the next 40 minutes, we'll talk about student activism and our shared movement to end college student hunger. But I actually want to take us back very close to home, back to Carleton College, actually, when I met a student, Jonah Khan, at a different conference about food justice. And before the conference had even ended, Jonah had emailed me and said, "We need to get a Swipe Out Hunger program started at Carleton immediately. What do I do?" And Jonah and I then spent the following next months working on a proposal, sending it over to Dean Livingston. And after many pushbacks, Jonah helped commission a study to understand how food insecurity was impacting students on campus, how many students were going hungry, and building more of a movement to get this program approved. As you know, today, the program was adopted, and now students are able to access warm, nourishing meals because of his work. And that activism has continued. Students like Andrew Farias and Ricky Garcia have been leading the way and building an amazing team of students on campus through Swipe Out Hunger to make sure that no one lacks access to enough food. And that's what I really want to focus on today, that none of this would have happened if Jonah hadn't sent that one email, hadn't been inspired to say, let me see what's possible if I decide to create a change that I want on campus. And of course, it wasn't just one student. It was building a movement, a team of students who effectively learned how to talk to their university leadership and implement a program in partnership that can really support students on campus. And it's gone way beyond meal swipes. I don't know if you all know this, but Minnesota was the first state ever to create a college student hunger day, which is on November 20th. Mark your calendars, get ready. But this movement has expanded beyond just Carleton in 2016 to now so many schools across Minnesota because of one email, because of one conversation. I want to take a moment and actually ask you all to step in with me. And I learned this lesson in college as well, that one person can make a difference. And I want to know, when was a moment that your relationship with power changed? When you realized that what's going on around you, the systems around us, the policies, the institutions, could be changed if I said something. If you want to think about it in a graph, on a scale of 1 to 10, your relationship with power went up. You got a little bit more comfortable with having power, was saying what needed to be said. What was that moment? What was the conversation you had? For me, I grew up in the suburbs of Los Angeles with two Middle Eastern parents where, if you know anything about immigrant kids, we're taught to be very obedient, never offend anyone. I don't think I'd offended a single person in my entire 18 years of life until I got to UCLA. And my friends and I, who had extra money in our meal plans, decided to go in the dining hall and use our money, our meal plans, to buy food, which we would then give out to other people who we knew were hungry on campus. And to my very innocent, naive surprise, one of our administrators came out to our table and smashed one of the to-go boxes of food that we'd collected and said, "This program needs to stop immediately. Get it off my campus." And something just didn't make sense to me. Here I was using my own money to feed people, do something good for the world. And here's this person who has authority, and I had always respected authority, telling me not to do this good thing. And you know that quote that the rules were made by someone no smarter than you? I think it became very obvious to me in that moment that this policy that I couldn't decide what to do with my meal swipes made no sense to me. And suddenly my relationship to power changed. I said, I have to say something about this. I have to work with my team, learn how to smooth talk, convince, negotiate with the administration to be able to change this policy. It took many months, but we were able to get a program approved where students were able to donate their meal swipes to their peers. You know, a part of this talk is also about stigma. And I will tell you that UCLA's first idea was to print out paper vouchers that we would give to students so they can go in the dining hall and hand a paper voucher to a person, immediately identifying them as someone who's food insecure. Makes no sense. So I think the point here is, even if you have a great idea, it's not just about the idea, focusing on the execution. And this is even more important when it comes to issues like hunger and food justice, where there is a stigma associated, where a person's experience does matter as they're trying to get the benefit that you're offering them. So I don't need to tell you all that hunger is a major issue in the country, right? 44 million Americans before the pandemic were experiencing hunger, and nationally, 1 in 3 students, as we learned, are experiencing food insecurity. If you have ever had to skip a meal, you're not alone. If you've ever gone to bed hungry, you're not alone. If you've made the decision to call a granola bar a meal, you are not alone. This is a crazy situation that we have put our students in, especially when you remember that from kindergarten through 12th grade, students were able to get free meals, right? Free breakfast and lunch every day. And now when you get to college, suddenly those meals are gone. So the movement that we're building at Swipe Out Hunger is on a mission to not just end hunger, but make sure that our college experience is equitable by introducing programs like meal swipe drives, by helping schools enroll students in SNAP. I wish this was more interactive. I'd do some trivia and ask you who wants to tell me what SNAP is, but SNAP is, formerly known as food stamps, by helping schools have effective marketing that's less stigmatizing so students feel welcome coming in and getting the resources that they need. So it's not just about the programs matter, right? We want to make sure that we're introducing effective solutions, but how we do it and how we talk about it is honestly just as important. One of my favorite stats to share is that 50% of college students that benefit from Swipe Out Hunger's meal swipe drives heard about the program through a friend. So despite all of our marketing, our flyers, announcements, it's all word of mouth. And that really works because whose mouths are talking about it? College students, the same students that are helping to talk about Swipe, whether they're donating meals, helping to facilitate Swipe. So I want to take a moment and just thank all of the students who are helping to, donate their swipes, who are out there raising awareness about the program, encouraging students to give, who are even redeeming the program and telling other friends about the benefits that they're able to get. It really comes down to your team and who's around and how you talk about these issues. So thank you to anyone who's gone above and beyond to share about a resource that someone else might benefit from. even at the fear of not knowing how they might receive it. So given that I'm giving a talk at Carleton College, I could not resist talking about Paul Wellstone and community organizing. I feel like if you do not know who Paul Wellstone is, look him up, a true legend. And Paul Wellstone always reminds me of one of my favorite community organizers, Marshall Gans. And if you bear with me, I'll share a quick quote from Marshall and then open it up from there. Marshall Gans says, "A leadership story is first a story of self, a story of why I've been called. Some people say, I don't want to talk about myself. But if you don't interpret to others your calling and your reason for doing what you're doing, do you think it will stay uninterpreted? No, other people will interpret it for you. You don't have a choice if you want to be a leader. You have to claim authorship of your story and learn to tell it to others so they can understand the values that move you to act, because it might move them to act as well. I want to know who are some leaders, people that when you see them out in the world, when they tell stories, you can see what their values are. Very obvious example that everyone might be familiar with are former presidents. If you compare the stories that number 45 chose to tell versus number 44 chose to tell, you can see what their values are and what they choose to lift up. So take a moment, think about who are friends, professors, who are people in your life, Oprah, who are people who when they speak, you can tell what their values are. Asking questions from the audience is a great chance to engage people and also get a sip of water. So as you think about this, I hope that thinking about people around you who tell stories that demonstrate their values helps you understand the importance of the stories that you choose to tell. Do you tell stories that bring people together, that help people feel loved, that help people feel challenged in the right ways, that being uncomfortable is sometimes okay? That involves a lot of vulnerability and sharing your own challenges and your own growth and your own journey. But by doing this, especially in the context of our social justice movements and our movements to end hunger, we'll be able to do what Marshall says here of understanding our own values that might that might inspire someone else to realize their own values that will make them act as well. Tapping into this is a skill that does not come easily. It has to be constantly worked on. What are the stories that we're choosing to tell? And how do they help us accomplish our goals? I hope that throughout this talk, you can use this as an example. What values have I chosen to lift up so far? What values resonate with you and what values don't? And how does that make you think about your work moving forward? And from here, I want to continue talking about stigma. And I will pass it over to one of our former student leaders, Emily Hinton, who does a great job of really telling a story in a way that demonstrates vulnerability and power. And I'll share more after the video. So one moment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Emily Hinton. I am a third-year student at Sonoma State University, majoring in philosophy and political science and minoring in criminal justice. I also serve as the Associated Student Body President. I sit on 13 committees. I'm taking 18 units, and I serve as a voting member for our CSSA Board of Advisors. The students and the rest of the Sonoma State population see me as someone who is successful, as someone who is a leader, someone who has my life together. What they don't know is that over the summer, before serving as their student body president this year, I lived out of my car, and the best week of my summer vacation was the week where all the ASI presidents had the opportunity to attend the Panetta Institute for Public Policy. And that wasn't my favorite week of the summer because of the experiences I had, but because for a week long I had a secure meal and didn't have to worry about where I was going to sleep that night. What students don't know is that I'm a first-generation low-income college student, and that I work 20 extra hours a week as a full-time nanny and part-time at a yogurt shop. I've been homeless 4 times in my life. What they don't know is that I'm a sexual assault survivor and that I deal with mental illness, and some days it is extremely difficult to get out of bed. But I get out of bed and I serve as their student body president so I can advocate for affordable and accessible higher education for those students who can't work 3 jobs as I do and who can't get out of bed. So I'm here today to support AB 214, and I want to thank Dr. Wepper for all of your efforts in this, because it really does make a difference in the lives of students as myself. Thank you.
Move the bill.
One sec. If that wasn't compelling, then I don't know what is. A huge part of this work has to be centering the students with lived experience, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because you can't push back, you can't fight back when you're hearing directly from someone who has lived this experience. When my parents immigrated to the US, they had the peace of mind to achieve the American dream because there were programs like SNAP, which again, we talked about. SNAP is food stamps, formerly known as. There was programs like SNAP and the free breakfast and lunch program that gave them the peace of mind that their kids were getting the meals that they needed to be able to succeed. I still remember my clammy hands as a kindergartner with these little yellow free lunch tickets and like hiding it. Even as a kindergartner, I knew like no one should see that I'm getting this ticket in this way. And this is the beauty of the evolution that we're at now with Swipe Out Hunger. Having gone from a group of kids who were students, I should say, who were pushing back, who were, met with a lot of initial rejection, to now being a leading organization who's able to tell universities like UCLA that you should not have paper vouchers as how we're distributing meals to students, that we need to be talking about the full experience. Have the staff in the dining halls been trained to know that people are going to be coming in with, even if it's on their meal plans, if it shows up differently on the system, that's fine. If their name is on a list somewhere, have our staff been trained to be meeting our students where they're at? I'd love to talk about the 3 pillars of Swipe Out Hunger's work. The first one being on-campus solutions, helping schools find the right fit for them. How do they design their Swipe Out Hunger program, their meal swipe drive? How are they running their food closet on campus? Do they have protein? Do they have produce? Are they stocking hygiene products? Do they have a SNAP enrollment program on campus? Is there someone there who can help students enroll? Helping schools find the right solutions. Secondly, is student empowerment. None of this is possible without actual students on campus who are running these programs. And so we love having our annual summit out in Los Angeles every summer, of course, digitally for the past 2 years, but being able to bring students together, to train them, to support them, and to also make this fun. The issues that we're facing, these injustices, are so toxic and draining and overwhelming that our movements to solve them can be anything but that. They have to be loving and nurturing and fun and involve music and center ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's the only way this will be successful and sustainable. And the third pillar of our work is our advocacy. Again, at a school like Carleton, I do not need to tell students that hunger is just a symptom of poverty. It's a reflection of poor wages, of high cost of living, of extremely expensive tuition, of housing inaffordability. And hunger is almost at the bottom of that. If you've been able to get through everything, the easiest thing to cut is meals. And so Swipe Out Hunger, as much as we love meal swipes, and I think this is a really cool program, and we love food closets, we are very honest with ourselves that the only way we will truly end hunger is through policy and advocacy. And sometimes people are afraid of policy or advocacy. They think it's, political, and as a nonprofit, you shouldn't get involved in anything political. But the reality is it's just about efficiency. It's the most efficient and effective way to catalyze a university system to have the support, to have the funding, and to have this like sense of peer pressure almost to institute a program that's long needed. So I'm really excited to share about a bill that's actually in Minnesota currently. Minnesota's, of course, been leading the way for a long time. It's called the Hunger-Free Campus Bill, which we passed in California. And I'll tell you the backstory here, because I don't know if anyone knows how a bill gets passed. I, to this day, don't exactly know, but I'll tell you our story. So in 2017, I got a call from an administrator at UC Santa Barbara who had recently been elected to the California State Senate. And she said, I want to pass a bill that takes Swipe Out Hunger onto every college in California. As a political nerd and a West Wing junkie, it was very exciting to get a phone call like this from an administrator and from a politician rather. And I was honest with her and I said, the Swipe Out Hunger is a great program, but we're not going to end college hunger through meal swipes. And also community colleges won't benefit from this program. So I sat with her team and we worked together to create a new bill, the Hunger-Free Campus program, that allowed students to advocate for three things. If you have a swipe program on your campus, if you have the chance to donate your meal swipes, if you have a food closet on your campus or some sort of food pop-up, and if you give students the chance to enroll in SNAP on campus, then you'll be eligible for funding from the state to help support that work. And we knew that most schools were already doing this work. So it was an incentive bill to get the last few stragglers or some of the schools that only had some of those programs up to get this adopted. I remember calling advocates across California and saying, hey, we're drafting this amazing bill. Will you help support it? And getting people saying things like, you're kidding me if you think this is going to pass or even get a hearing, or this is not the right time. We have other issues we need to center. This is about Pell. We need to be advocating for Pell in this moment. And other people who just wouldn't even respond to emails, they just really didn't believe that it was possible. This is where youth activism is so valuable. That naivete that I talked about earlier kicks in and you're like, well, what do I have to lose? I don't know how hard this is. And surprising to everyone, 2 months after we had that initial phone call to draft this bill, I found myself in Sacramento testifying on behalf of the Hunger-Free Campus Bill. And about a month after that, the governor signed the bill into law, sending immediately $7.5 million directly to colleges to ensure that they have the resources they need to help address student hunger. And of course, because a strong, sustainable movement is not a flash in the pan. It's not just about one movement, especially when it comes to advocacy. The coalition that we had built to advocate for this, which included the university, which included students, local nonprofits, policymakers, continued to advocate. And the next year, they passed $15 million. And now the funding has been institutionalized. We barely need to, we will still advocate for it and still thank lawmakers for it. But now that funding is committed year after year in the governor's budget to go directly to schools. And again, a few months before this, people were saying this is not going to happen. What it took was naivete, for sure, but perseverance, talking to the right people, and also trusting that we have to develop a bill that's not just about our program, but really centers the issue. And this is what I love about the moment that we're in right now, and especially your all's generation. You don't care about people, you care about movements. Of course, you care about people, but it's less about the leader and it's more about the movement. It's what is our shared goal here? We'll show up in coalition with a diverse group of people with the goal of achieving some shared vision of what we have for our campus and for our communities. This is why I love Swipe Out Hunger, because we encourage our local students to out-innovate us. Some of our best ideas have come from students doing it in one city, us taking it nationally, and sharing it with other students on campus and across the country, who are able to then take it and adapt it for their campus, because we know that no local organization is able to be successful when so many of the issues that we're faced with are very local. We need local leadership who know what the exact challenges are. My favorite analogy for this is a starfish or a spider, which is a great book if anyone is looking for a new business book. But a starfish, I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but if you chop off the arms of a starfish, it'll regrow. Even the chopped off arm might regrow into a starfish. But if you were to break a few legs of a spider, which I'm not encouraging, spiders are our friends, that spider wouldn't be able to walk. It would really be the end of that spider. So how do we build movements that are not centered around a person or a certain program that needs to look exactly one way? But how do we build movements, especially in the hunger space, where a solution for a rural school is very different for an urban school, that are starfish, where it can evolve and change, and that's a natural part of how we're building our movements. I wish that I could bring up Andrew and so many of the other students at Carleton who are doing this work every day and can probably speak so much better to how this is actually manifesting on the ground. I remember, in Carrie's introduction, he talked about how we were invited to the White House and recognized by President Obama. And while we were sitting in that room, I remember getting an email from our dean of students, I think it was a dean or some authority figure, saying, let's stop the program for a semester. We don't need to run this program every time. So a core part of this is the perseverance to know that as you face rejection, as you face success, they're going to happen at the same time. It's very difficult to be able to achieve success to a point where you won't have to continue to push past and be focused on where you want to head next. So I want to encourage you, as I'm sharing things that you're like, that's not realistic, there's no way that's going to happen, add questions into the chat. Would love to be able to at least be in a one-way and text conversation about what this looks like on the ground, because I'm sure I'm leaving out many of the challenging moments, and would love to make sure that this isn't just an inspirational talk that makes you feel good and then 15 minutes later you're on to your real life challenges. But what are ways that this can actually be a chance to talk about the real challenges and the realities that come with activism, that come with student leadership, that come with being a person who cares, because caring is not easy. And I feel like the best thing that we can do is arm ourselves to be prepared for the journey ahead. I'd love to just throw out a couple more things and then open it up for Q&A. So I talked about our 3 pillars of our work: our on-campus solutions, our student empowerment work, and our advocacy work. And I want to just be clear that these are not pillars that work in silos, but they're a total cycle. The only way that our advocacy was successful, for anyone on this call who's interested in getting involved in policy work, the best policy ideas come from the ground. The greatest case study for this is the Black Panther movement and their creation of the K-12 lunch meals, the breakfast and lunch programs. That was an idea that started at the grassroots level. Some federal committee learned about it after that program was run for nearly a decade and adopted it at the federal level. So the beauty of this cycle is that by passing more legislation, there's more funding for more innovative programs to exist. We test and iterate those innovative programs, which are then case studies for more policy. So this is not an overnight process, but it's a beautiful way to remember that even if a campaign to get something passed on campus or passed at the advocacy level doesn't go through, it starts to set a precedent for a new program, for a new case study that can eventually be adopted in some other way. And one of my favorite examples of this is our marketing. So many of our schools ask us, how can they adopt less stigmatized marketing on campus? And the most to the point example that our team often gives is, if you have a sign that says, hey, hungry students, come here and access free food. It's a great sign. Makes a lot of sense that you made that sign. But when you compare that to a sign that says, last week, 100 students at Carleton College came by the food closet. Here's the address, here are the times. It helps students feel less alone. It destigmatizes it. And it has people feel like this place is a cool, fun, chill place to be. And typically when I tell these stories to the public, they have a certain image of who a hungry college student is. And I remember, going to elite institutions, big private schools, and walking into their food closets and seeing dozens of students there at a time, waiting in line to enter the dining hall, to enter the food closet and get access to what they need. And the way that we start to change the perception that people have of hungry college students is by telling stories of the reality on the ground. That 1 in 5 college students have children, their parents. That 1 in 3 college students are food insecure. That 30 million students from kindergarten through 12th grade get their primary meals from their schools. Building a new image of who's on campus, because we can't afford to not invest in the needs of today's students. For so long, students have gotten college ready, taken the tests, done the dorm shopping, done what they needed to be ready for college. And our colleges have tried to be ready for today's students. But I think the role of the student leaders that we have today is to give them a little bit more of a push, to have them realize what their true needs are and give them some of the ideas to be able to get there. So I'm gonna put a pin there and open it up for any questions from you all.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, and now let's turn to some audience questions. In other places, you've said that there is no solution to hunger, but there are attainable steps to reducing hunger in local communities. Why is it important to emphasize steps rather than a solution in addressing community needs?
I mean, it's a great question. And I think the question itself highlights why. So much of what we're going after is so big that being able to get not only ourselves convinced that we're able to solve this, but anyone that we're trying to engage in this work, if we go to a university leader and we say, hey, if you adopt this program, we'll be able to end hunger, they might be upset when the following year, there are still hungry people on their campus. So being able to, as we engage people in our work, be very clear and say, this will help us improve food insecurity by 10% or 15%. And this is a part of a 10-year plan. And to be able to say that after 10 years, you helped end hunger in a community is pretty incredible. So it's all about framing it in the larger work that needs to be done and getting people prepared for the long ride.
Why do you emphasize the role of students in civic engagement and advocacy?
It's a really important question. And the reason why is students have this ability to, at the same time, and this is another Marshall Gans-ism, that students can hold how broken the world is and that pain and that rage that they feel seeing an injustice, at the same time that in their hearts, they can hold a sense of optimism and a possibility. And these two together at the same time, this ability to know that the world is broken and also we can't sit and do nothing about it, is something so rare for young people, because at a certain point, we become resigned. We accept things for the way that we are, for the way that they are. Or we, on the other end, just become cynical and don't think that anything is possible. We've tried and we've become resigned. So how do we make sure that that sense of optimism and also rage, which is a valuable thing in small doses, continue to be a part of our lives as young people and as old people, right? We call a lot of old people who are hopeful crazy, but no, those are the people who've made it, who've made the right choices.
Sort of a follow-up question to that. What place does idealism have in your engagement with the work that you are doing?
Idealism, I feel like I confuse idealism for naivete sometimes in the best way. You have to choose what story you want. Right now, there's so many heavy injustices around us. I can either adopt the narrative that there's no hope, that things are the way that they are, and I am completely powerless. That's right, totally right. And there's also the choice of, I have seen generations of people be the ones who created the change in their communities and across the country. And I can also choose that story and choose that narrative. And so I think idealism is just presenting people with another choice of, you can either accept things the way that they are or you can choose to think about the other possibility, which is a little bit harder, but I think will lead to a much more fun life.
What skills do you find helpful in creating this movement that students would benefit from learning?
This is one of my favorite questions because I've got a couple answers for you, Alex. So first and foremost, you have to learn to center the mission over yourself and your ego. Not in the sense that you shouldn't take care of yourself, but if that one day when the administrators told us that you should, I forgot to tell us in the story actually, but when we started the Swipe Out Hunger program at UCLA, we wanted to continue doing it the way that we were doing it, where we were taking meals and handing it out to people in to-go boxes. And it was actually the administrators, these same punks who were trying to shut down our program, who said, actually, it would be way more efficient if we just did this transfer. And if I had said, no, I love the grassroots feel of these styrofoam boxes, and this is a big part of the movement of like people exchanging, and we want people to meet each other. If I had stuck with that initial iteration of our program, we would not have scaled now to 134 universities across the US serving, over 2 million meals. So I think the first thing is knowing, what are you attached to? What is special to you? Versus what is actually going to solve this problem? What is actually going to accomplish the goal at hand? And the best way to separate that is by talking to people who know you really well, who will remind you that I know you're excited about this, but what really needs to happen is a focus on this. So continuing with that thread of the ego, separating self from the mission, it's the other piece of you're going to have to work with people you don't like or people you don't vibe with, even if you don't necessarily not like them. And the reality is that starting as a student of developing that muscle of I'm going to have to sit in coalition with someone I don't agree with someone who doesn't get me. If you're able to do that now, you will be so much better prepared for the many rooms throughout your life that you're going to have to sit in with bosses, with partners, with customers, with clients, with whatever industry you go into, patients that really don't see the world the way that you do. But you'll have the muscle to be able to still accomplish whatever goal you have to accomplish while you're in that room with someone, because as a student, you sat across from that dean, from that dining director, from that peer, whoever it was, who didn't agree with you, and you were still able to win. So as much as we can separate, again, ourselves from the mission, we'll be significantly more successful. The last thing that I'll say is find other students and team members who build around your strengths. So I always forgot people's birthdays to celebrate things. And so I made sure to have students join our group at first who love morale building and love those skills. And the best way to be a successful student leader is to actually invite people in to bring in their talents and their strengths. So you invite someone to join your cause. What are you asking them to specifically contribute? And you might have to ask them, like, what do you want to actually give here? That way people know why they're showing up in the room. And that's the most powerful calling card, telling someone exactly why they're needed in the movement.
What does the future of Swipe Out Hunger look like? Are there any upcoming plans for the organization or the program nationwide?
Yes, so Swipe Out Hunger has grown over the past 10 years to over 134 universities, which is really incredible, right? Given that we were just a bunch of students breaking the rules about 10 years ago. I'll say that we've kind of accomplished a lot of that initial vision, which was to encourage schools to adopt programs that end hunger. When we started, I remember so many schools saying, there's no way that their students on my campus who are hungry. Schools who said, even if there are students on campus who are hungry, it's not my responsibility. In fact, we had a school not too long ago, a very prestigious Ivy League school, where a dean said to us, anorexia is a bigger problem on my campus than food insecurity, which is not true, and such a defensive reaction from our institutional leaders. And so our mission is to continue to change this narrative that it is the university's responsibility to care for the needs of their students, right? Even if they're not the ones actually leading the way on the work, it's bringing in food closets, bringing in other partners who can help lead the way with them. So I feel like our mission moving forward is to continue to push that forward. One of my secret dreams is to get US News and World Report to add basic needs as a way that they judge universities, which Carleton would do very well on. Being able to say, how is the school actually showing up for their students? Those are my soft answers to your question, but tactically and tangibly, we're continuing to introduce our legislation, which has now been taken to 8 different states. We've passed it in California, as I shared. We've passed it in New Jersey. We've passed it in Maryland just a month ago. And now it's been introduced in Minnesota. Hopefully it'll pass soon. Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, North Carolina, and a handful of other states. So continuing to push our legislative work. If any of you are interested in getting involved in advocacy work in Minnesota or anywhere else in your home states, send us an email. Would love to be able to connect with you all. I'm pretty easy to find online. And we're also looking to really expand our mission. As I've said over and over again on this presentation, we know that we will not swipe our way out of this issue. This will take a systemic solution across our campuses. So we're continuing to introduce other innovative programs on college campuses that can really help solve hunger. And anything else, send me an email and I'll share all of our secret plans. And maybe you can help us make them come to life.
One of our students has said, has asked, what are other ways we can get involved on campus and in the local community beyond the swipe drive?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you should follow the Swipe Out Hunger at Swipe. I think this handle is like Swipe at Carleton Swipes. If you just look for that on Instagram, you'll be able to find the page where it's not just about swipe drives, but there's a bunch of ways that you can get involved with the chapter in whatever way you see, and be able to stay involved on campus. But being able to be involved in advocacy work is one of those. Continuing to educate different stakeholders on campus. Do professors know that these resources exist? Do administrators know that they can help refer students or they can help advocate for the program's expansion? So there's so much that you can do by coming up with your own ideas and solutions and really implementing them. But I think the best place to go to is, or reach out to if you know any of the student leaders involved with the program on campus, to reach out directly to them. Thank you, Andrew, at carleton.swipes on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll be able to plug in there.
We talked about advocacy and finding out what issues you're passionate about supporting. What about the priorities in our respective communities? Those priorities may change from community to community. How do we tie in our passion for advocacy with the current existing priorities within a specific community?
Yeah, I think I go back to values, right? When you have a community that cares about something, connecting that issue to hunger is often not too far of a stretch. How do we get this community that cares about an issue like education or racial justice or income inequality to see how hunger is also at the intersection of that work? One of our favorite words at Swipe is coalition. How do we find other partners who are like-minded, who might have an in with an advocacy partner, with a legislator, and have them join our team and help become an advocate for this issue as well? The unfortunate thing is there's a lot of lobbyists for things like prisons and jails and coal industries, but there aren't lobbyists for college students. So our job is to see who is already on the Hill, who is at these state capitals talking to legislators, and how do we get them to add Swipe Out Hunger as an issue there. I'll take a quick detour and actually talk about some of our corporate partnerships here. I say this with, hesitancy, because I know many college students don't like companies, as you shouldn't. Capitalism is not something that college students are often down with, which I understand. But where we've arrived at, the compromise that we've made with Swipe Out Hunger is these companies hold a lot of power and sway. How do we influence them to use that positionality for good? So one of our corporate partners has a very powerful lobbying arm. They're a food service company. And we've been in meetings with them for the past year. And we've gotten to the point where when they're having leadership conversations with the heads of USDA, what issue are they bringing up? SNAP access for college students. Can you imagine being that USDA person and having a lobbyist from a major food company come and talk to you about expanding SNAP for college students? It's because that company realized that if more college students have SNAP money on their cards, that's more money that they're going to spend at that school's retailer. So starting to find that alignment of where are our shared goals and how does that help us advocate is, again, a skill that when you are able to say, let me get in bed with an unlikely bedfellow, you're able to find the opportunity to really make a difference. And that's not just with advocacy work, but even with research. We've worked with large publicly traded companies to do research and find amazing data on students because they're in a position to send out a mass survey across the country. So a huge part of this is finding alignment between companies that might not be the ideal partner and being able to succeed in that way.
What other issues are you personally passionate about?
Thank you for that question. Something I didn't dive too much into, which is a huge part of my personal journey, is being a female founder. Having developed a nonprofit for the past 8 years, as a young woman who was, as I mentioned, taught to never be offensive, never to say anything that would upset anyone, to now being in a role where I have to encourage people to do that every day, only happened because I was supported and encouraged by other people, men and women, who told me, no, like the world needs your voice. And so a big part of my work now is making sure that any young person, and specifically young women, have that support and encouragement to be able to accomplish what they want, what they feel in their heart of hearts, to be able to go out and do that work. So I mentor a number of young men and women and encouraging them to put their vision out into the world. I think that's a huge part of a cause that I care about. And alongside that, I feel like none of us can get away without caring about the environment. And so thinking about my personal footprint, thinking about our community, and how we can, be able to take care of not just our people, but the planet, because it's all so connected. Other than that, I'm a very big fan of parks. Los Angeles does not have many parks, but creating public spaces for people to gather and be together, I feel like is going to be so important, especially as we begin to climb out of this pandemic together.
Before we close today, do you have a final comment, an encouragement for the students who are watching this now or who will be watching this later?
Yeah, I'll close with something I haven't shared too much about, but it's this notion of leading with love. And that doesn't mean you have to be obsessed with the person that you're talking to and really love them. It just means where you're operating from as you're talking to them is slightly above neutral. Being able to bring that energy into any phone call you go into as you're building these movements will lead to a much more, I'd wanted to use the word viral, but I don't know if that's the right word anymore, but a much more like well-received, well-accepted, warm and engaged movement. Whether you're talking to an administrator and they're being cold, or you're talking to a student who's being dismissive, if you try to bring in a sense of love and fraternalism even into the conversation, imagine whatever image that brings that energy to you, who is a leader in that way, who brings a sense of familiarity and love into the conversation. And you'll see how significantly your work changes. So much of this is doing the right work, right? Having done the right research and starting the right programs. But I hope that what I leave you with is being able to come in with an energy that's open and welcoming and loving, even if you're not extroverted, in whatever way that looks like for you. Bringing in some of that love into your conversations will go a long way, not just for your cause, but for all of the social justice movements that we're building today. I think the world needs it more than ever.
Rachel, this has been quite inspiring, and I do thank you for the time that you've invested with us today. And thank you all for joining us today. Our guest next week will be climate policy expert, Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. In the meantime, please stay well and be kind. Thank you.
Thank you.